Greetings, innovators and leaders. This is AI for the C-Suite, your compass for navigating the exponential age. I'm your host, Chad Harvey, and we're here to bring you cutting-edge insights on AI tailored specifically for middle-market organizations. Buckle up as we embark on a journey through the transformative world of artificial intelligence. Today, I am delighted to welcome Andrew Amann, the CEO and co-founder of NineTwoThree AI Studio, one of America's top AI consulting agencies. Andrew brings a fascinating blend of technical expertise and entrepreneurial success to our conversation. Starting his career as a nuclear submarine engineer, he invented supply chain improvements that earned him 2 U.S. patents before transitioning into the startup world. Over the past 13 years, Andrew has built NineTwoThree into an award-winning consultancy that's worked with major brands like Consumer Reports, Simplisafe, and Experian. His team has built over 150 products, launched 14 companies with multiple exits, and earned recognition as a 4-time Inc. 5000 fastest growing company. What sets Andrew apart is his practical approach to AI implementation. His projects are seeing returns in investment in weeks, not months. With 8 years of AI experience, Andrew specializes in workflow automation and finding efficiencies that actually move the needle for businesses. He's spoken at major conferences, including Akeneo, MicroConf, and appeared on dozens of AI-focused podcasts. His company has created memorable AI products like ChuckGPT for FanDuel and AskCR for Consumer Reports. Andrew lives outside Boston with his family, and fun fact, he was once a mascot at UConn. Today, we'll explore how middle-market companies can harness AI for real business impact, and if I'm super persuasive, perhaps we'll get Andrew to try on his old mascot costume for us. Andrew, welcome to AI for the C-Suite.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. I'm not going to make you jump through fire rings or put on that costume again. Instead, we're going to dive right into the exciting world of AI. And I know that one of your focuses is ROI and accelerating ROI for organizations in weeks instead of months. So, yes. For the middle market execs out there that are listening and folks just in general that are skeptical about AI hype, what is the difference between an AI project that delivers quick returns versus those that become expensive experiments?
Yeah, it's the ownership from the C-suite to understand that AI is something they want to invest in as opposed to something they want to play with. And a lot of requests we get are hey, I'm interested in AI because I've been told to use it. Can you go install this product on my company? And they never work. They also don't want to spend what they seemingly think is 6 figures of money that's going to be a waste. They want to spend $20,000 for a toy because they saw it on Twitter or they saw another friend have it. And those toys are fun. I don't think it's a bad thing to start using AI somehow, but you're never going to get the actual returns that you can get with a company like ours that's actually building custom software. But the first question we asked at the beginning of every project is, what is the KPI we're going to be tracking? That if you spend $100,000 in tech in building this AI product, how are we going to make $100,000 for your company? Or how are we going to save $100,000 for your company by the end of the year? And so there should be a return on investment in less than a year with a project that takes weeks and not months.
So could you give us a specific example of one of those projects where you were able to deliver that ROI in an accelerated fashion, or at least in a fashion that exceeded what the CEOs or the C-suite leaders thought they were going to be getting?
Sure. So we have 3 or 4 examples now, just in the last few months, where a company has come to us to solve a workflow automation problem, something that was taking their research team or their analyst 40 hours, 50 hours, or 60 hours of time to do that analysis and put it into a very specific framework. We have a medical company that has to do research analysis for when big medical companies ask for kind of what is the report, what is the result of this medical research? And they have to summarize that, but there's a very specific format that they have to put all of the pieces of information they got from the giant report so that it can be a public outreach or a news story that checks all the boxes that it was validated correctly through a system. And so that system can be AI controlled, it can be AI managed so that every piece of information goes into the right block and into the right section. And so we've taken those 40 or 50 hours of work and turned that into 4 minutes of results with a few hours of a human to check those results. And I say this with every project we've ever built. It starts with a human to outline it and tell the AI what to do. then that AI can take whatever used to be 30 hours of work and convert that down to 4 minutes of results. But it's still going to take the human at the end of that to take those results and make sure that they're validated, accurate, and ready for production.
Have you seen those metrics that you just threw out in terms of the 30 hours, the 4 hours, the 4 minutes? Have you seen those change and evolve even in the last couple of years? Is that scale sliding?
Since the release of ChatGPT 3.5, the results have been there for all of these companies. The large language models, in our opinion, has topped out on what their capabilities are for workflow automation. Once you get summarization at the accuracy that they're getting at 80 or 90%, it's now, are you using that summarization to save time for your company? The answer in many of those scenarios is no. And so that's the funny thing, is that the models are fully capable of taking what used to be a lot of work for a human and reducing that. The ChatGPT 4.0, 5.0, 6.0, whatever comes out doesn't save more time because the summarization was enough to get the accuracy that was needed. Now, that's a non-deterministic answer. Summary is something that is contextual, right? It's subjective. We want specific answers in a lot of cases. And so when a client comes to us and says, I cannot be wrong when I give out this output, it has to give the exact answer every time. Well, that's a deterministic result that AI can still do if you break down the problem small enough to make sure that it can give the result that's necessary and fact-checked and validated and grounded. And so that involves more engineering, but it doesn't involve a bigger foundational model from OpenAI. It involves better engineering around diagnosing that problem to be such a small, minute piece of information that it's trying to get, that when it returns that answer, you can ground and have confidence that it's the right answer, and therefore you can trust the system again.
Mm-hmm. The engineering piece that you identified there as the path through the problem to get that result that you're looking for, do you find that you can engineer your way through this in terms of a single model, or do you need to look at more adversarial networks in order to get that type of result?
Yeah, I guess rephrase it a little bit, because I was going one direction as you started the question, but I reversed my concept on the second part. So rephrase it again just so I can get my mind straight, please.
Yeah. What I was basically wondering is, as you're working with, you called it looking for a deterministic outcome, I think was the language you used, right? And we all know that the issue with a lot of these large language model systems is that they're generative. They want to generate. And so constraining them to get that deterministic outcome is oftentimes very difficult.
Yes.
One of the things that I've seen work very well is folks putting guardrails around the systems in order to get that outcome. Another approach is more of like an adversarial network where you pit two systems against each other in order to get the type of result that you're looking for. And I'm curious, this might be a little down in the weeds, but I'm curious what your view is in terms of how you engineer your way through this problem. Do you take an adversarial network approach? Do you take more of a guardrails or a constrainment approach? How do you get that result?
Yeah, so I get the question now. Yeah, so when you guardrail something, you're never going to get it to be deterministic. And I'll give you a perfect scenario. We worked on Charles Barkley's impersonator for FanDuel. It was called Chuck GPT, and it was the impersonation of Charles Barkley inside of a little robot that would primarily make fun of Charles, like food, love basketball, and not really like San Antonio. And so we built this, but the request was from FanDuel was, I don't just want it to talk about sports. I want it to be fun and entertaining. I want it to know how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I want it to know, like, what is the best food in the United States? I want to be able to ask it, like, what are the top 3 places in the United States to find a churro, right? Because Charles Barkley loves churros. And so to do that, you have to put the guardrails on. You have to make sure that the brand is not going to have a negative impact by something that Chuck GPT says. And that is very hard. It took months and months and months to control a large language model to not say specific things. The proper approach is to only allow a specific subject. And if you only allow sports, the engineering is much easier, because once it goes outside of sports, it's going to be easy to say that this is not sports related, bring it back home. But then you have all of the nuances inside of sports. There's gambling, of course, which is FanDuel's, bread and butter. But there's also controversy that happens in sports and things that players have done that is sports related. And of course, you can get the bot to say something horribly. So when you control the system that way, you're up against an engineering challenge. And our team is fully capable of it to restrict it from saying things that will hurt a brand. And I think that is an incredible skill that we've acquired. over the course of the last, we've been doing this for 3 years, at least with large language models, but 8 years inside of machine learning and generative models themselves. And with that lessons and practice, we've learned how to train to get it to respond. But you can't just do that in a month or 2 months and hope that it's going to work on your customer service bot. And there will be still an opportunity or a chance for somebody to try to break it in a little way. The second option you provided, the adversarial way, we like to break it down in that the best answer to a lot of the problems is not a large language model. So I'll give you an example. We were helping with prison documentation. When somebody goes to prison, they have a thing called the PSR. And that PSR has a bunch of language on it of what the person did good or bad to help the judge decide and the prosecution decide what the prison sentence will be. Well, the first question is, what is this person's name? And of course, you can use a large language model for that, but you can also use OCR text recognition and some of the old software tricks that we've used in the past to know what a name is or what's not a name. And so a combination of the tools to summarize something, to understand something, and to semantically know what the result is supposed to be, we can fact check that it's a name or not by using old software knowledge. And is Emma a name, or is 923 Digital a name? Those all of those things matter, and there's software tools that have been created to do these types of checks. But a date is a perfect example. If you OCR text recognition of a document and you find a date on that document, well, there's 3 or 4 ways a date can be written. It's either the European way, where the month is first, and the month is second, or the English way, where the American way, where the month is first. And that is a text recognition to know the pattern of 3 numbers after each other are the format of a date. There's so many companies with OCR text recognition algorithms that have been created over the time to determine what is a date and what is not a date, and then with confidence tell you that that's a date. So when you combine these tools together, you start to use that adversarial network that you're suggesting, and you combine it not just with large language models, but you can ground those large language models on other large language models. And if 4 of them get the same answer, there's a good probability that that is the right answer. If 3 of them get the same answer and a software analysis or an OCR text recognition analysis gets the same answer, there's a good probability it's the right answer. So when you engineer this, there's ways to deterministically give those results that are accurate, and you can put your weight behind and say, I trust it.
So I think the key question for me after all that is, if I fire up ChuckGPT and I ask it to call me a sexy churro, what is the result going to be?
It'll probably respond, I can't talk about this, because you've used the word that there's 450 words in the English language and combination of words that I've learned through this project that you cannot say in combination of each other because they are swear words. And I would think that one of them is one you just used. But it works on the input and output. And that's the amazing thing is most people try to trick the input, the prompt, and they try to get it to talk about, different ways, like my grandmother's sick, I really need this piece of information. And they do that on the input. But what happens is the model then has to provide text back to the user. And if you put a filter on that output text, now you start to do all of the word analysis and the keyword checking on the way out, but you also do the semantics on the way out. What does this mean before the user sees it? And of course, it slows down the system, but it gives you a very high confidence that if somebody was to trick it, the output is still not coming back the way that somebody wanted it to.
Got it. So this belies my ignorance. I actually don't use FanDuel. I'm not really big into betting. Is ChuckGPT predominantly a text-based app, or is there voice interaction?
There's voice. So you can go on to chuck.fanduel.com and chuckgpt.fanduel.com, and you'll be presented with a bot. If you're watching the video, it looks like this. It's a Charles Barkley. That's a 3D printed one. I don't have the real one.
Love it.
But yeah, it's like it's a object it represents Charles Barkley, and it starts first by talking, and it says, hey, I'm Chuck, ask me anything. And then you can type anything you want. You can ask how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then Chuck will both respond in text and in voice.
Okay. So I'm getting a lot more inquiries from folks recently about customer service AI systems that can converse with you in natural language instead of just typing. Yep. The process that you've outlined here for what you went through with ChuckGPT, I've got to think that that's very similar to what you would do if you were looking to program a customer service AI to take inbound calls. Yes?
There are some components that are similar. customer service has gone through an evolution. I don't know what version we're in right now, but I know we're in like AI 3.0. The first version of AI was really social media back in 2012. The social media feeds and predicting which social media feed you're going to see next. That was the first rollout of AI that I think a large percentage of humans were interacting with, whether we were aware or not. This is AI 1.0. And then 2.0 came out with the release of ChatGPT, where we thought everything can be natural language based. And immediately customer service bots popped up because we thought that was a great representation of having something that can respond with context and knowledge. And we immediately created this thing called a RAG, which is a retrieval augmented generation, which is like, I have a knowledge of a bunch of information. I want you to read this, not the copious of the internet, and return information from my knowledge base, not the internet. And we jumped into that. And that's really like the second phase of what we all thought was possible. This third phase, and I don't know if it's clearly defined across the great AI leaders and technologists, but we've transitioned this year, not just as a company, but as a human race using artificial intelligence. We've transitioned that AI is no longer a copy-paste mechanism for natural language. AI is a helper of a human process. And when you look at it that way in customer service, it shouldn't replace customer service. It should augment customer service. And so while a human's about to respond, they should be using a copious of knowledge that the AI can research very quickly. And instead of getting back to you in 24 hours, the human should be able to get back to you in 2 minutes with the answer, with the correct information, with the correct documentation. And when you look at it that way, AI is not there to replace the customer service. It's there to speed up their response time. And the people that have used it really well, especially on the external side of customer service, use it like that, right? The customer service individual or human will prompt the GPT alongside while they're answering the customer. And that's the best use case. The way that I think AI is being used at companies now is that way, is giving an employee 8 hands when they only have 2, and using the system that they're working inside of to have the AI enhance the information of that system. They shouldn't be copy pasting from ChatGPT or any of the other large language models. They should be staring at the screen that is supposed to give them the information and populating more information to give them the answer sooner.
I really like the way that you've laid that out in terms of how a workflow is going to look going forward, and that handoff between the knowledge retrieval and augmentation of an AI system and a human being. And I think a lot of organizations are starting to get tripped up with shiny object syndrome. They're
Yes.
looking at the AI systems and they want to go very, very deep with those. And I would imagine that you entertain a lot of what I would call discovery calls with potential clients around that. And I know you've worked with some large organizations, Consumer Reports, Simplisafe, folks like that. When you're working with either them or middle market companies, how do you identify where AI can be most useful versus maybe it's just technological overkill? It's like hitting a gnat with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, that's transitioned as well as we moved into this third wave of AI. When it first came out, the large companies had the budget and the risk tolerance to test a user interfaced AI system that their users would log into instead of what they were used to logging into. And so we created a lot of applications and a lot of tools that would be used alongside Microsoft Office, Google Workspace. When we built Consumer Reports, there was a search bar, but there was a lot of, hey, we need this application with AI to do this new thing. And the question you're asking is like, where do customers start now? People are starting to get smarter about what AI can do, and they're honing in the fact that I have a lot of waste at my company. I have a process in which I've heard AI can do something really good at. And so a lot of the calls I've taken in the last 2 months, especially on the proposal standpoint, has been, I have 50 customer service reps that are answering the same question over and over. How do I help them get the right answer? Or I go through hundreds of candidates for my HR team, and I only have 3 HR people, and they're spending all the time filtering. How do I filter the individuals that are applying for this job to the right person so my HR team doesn't get bombarded? We're starting to ask the right questions because we know what AI can do, and we're starting to see that if it can summarize, if it can analyze, if it can do research for us, if it can find information in a haystack of information, those types of jobs are part of somebody's workday. It's not a full employee. It's part of somebody's workday that takes a lot of time that they shouldn't be doing. And if you multiply that out times the number of humans in that company that are doing that same mundane task, now you're starting to see 6 to 7 figures of cost associated to that application. And then when they call us, we're starting to say, great, our first question is, what is your KPI? But our second question is, if we solve this for $200,000 or $150,000, can you make that money back in 1 year once it's deployed? And if the answer is yes, you're just making free money, because now you're always going to be making the savings. And those employees, the thing that people forget about, if they're spending 10 hours a day and there's 20 of them, well, you have 200 hours every single day that is going to be saved. Well, I did the math wrong because I multiplied times month instead of day. People are working 8 hours a day. But my point is, like, if you take a 40-hour work week and 10 hours of each person's time is spent on this specific task, and there's 20 of them, well, now you have 200 hours a month of savings for those individuals to go find revenue-driving opportunities for your company. So you save it on two ends, both on the immediate cost that the tool solves for you, and the second of the opportunity of what the people could be doing with their days and their saved time.
Where you started with that was really the intersection between processes that are mapped and understood and the knowledge base that's necessary for people to effectively actuate those processes. Is that fair? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
I have yet to walk into an organization that fully understands its processes, and I have to think that a good piece of what you do is helping them map those processes so that you can then determine where you're going to automate. Is that fair?
Yeah, we just have to think of it differently. And we have to think of it as, we're not trying to take procedures and dump them into a knowledge base and then have those procedures turn out this perfect process that everybody's going to follow from there on out. What the AI is incredibly, incredibly good at is going into what the best human in that organization, in that department does every day that they're at that job, and replicates that human's reasoning when they're considered a problem or asked a question. And we all know this person in every company. It's usually like Joanne in accounting or Phil in finance. That person's been there for 25 years. And even though they're in finance, they seemingly have the answer to any question that appears in that company. And it's not something that's in a process document that you can teach a junior on. But if we could take Phil and replicate what he knows and put that into an AI model that you can ping and ask questions to, on top of the processes and procedures that have been created for that company, you now have a brand voice and you have Phil's time back. But you also, any junior that comes into the company or any new person that comes in can instantly get information from Phil's brain by him being replicated across that department through this AI bot. When you think of it that way, AI is, again, taking 2 hands and turning them into 8, and it's taking Phil's time from 40 to 50 hours a week of answering other people's questions down to him as the best employee in your company in that department being able to do more revenue driving things because he doesn't have to spend time training or listening to other people ask questions.
Got it. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm misinterpreting what you just said, but it sounds like the best practice in your view is not to do a full process map based on some random folks from a department, but to find the number one A player and really drain their brain, so to speak. Is that fair?
And mimic them, follow their day-to-day, figure out what they do when they start their day, what information are they logging into, how are they gathering their information, what are they reading, what systems are they on. All systems are a result of the brand using that system for a period of time and creating their own IP around how they talk, how they respond, how they communicate. It's like if you took them and put them on an island, they would still be HubSpot people 5 years from now that use the HubSpot language because that's what they used for 5 years in HubSpot. It's abbreviations that you and I don't even know, but if 2 HubSpot people are sitting having lunch, it sounds like they're talking another language. That was created from Dharmesh and like way back in the day when they started HubSpot with putting orange everywhere and creating these acronyms and then talking like that over and over and over and over again. That becomes the IP, and that's not in a procedure document. That's through the communication of 2 individuals talking. And that's what you need to capture. You need to capture that person's essence of, I have a lot of knowledge, I have a lot of conversations. How do I train the AI to understand my IP of my company while also enabling the people at the company to learn from me while doing the right process?
That's a pretty profound shift with a lot of downstream implications. And one of the things that I'm wondering, based on what you've just outlined there, is what does that do then to the onboarding process? How does that show up in the HR department? both in terms of the folks that you've got as well as the candidates that you're looking for. Because if the system is trained on the A player, and again, to use your example, we're all now speaking HubSpotese at a level that only the founders could imagine. What does that do in terms of the type of talent that we're looking for? Has that really elevated our game, or are we just kind of masking some things? I'm interested there. What have you seen?
It's a good question. I will say, we see the beginning phases of this getting implemented. There is so much energy around the ideas that come when people start realizing that AI is there to help them, not replace them. And the reinvigoration of work happens. People start realizing I'm good at my job. I'm teaching this machine the things that I do, and then I'm able to do the fun things of my job and not the things I'm annoyed at. And then that spreads to 2, 3, 4 people across that same organization. They're like, you should try this tool. And then they have ideas. And we name those ideas in the product after the people that named them. And then they get excited that the fill feature was released, right? And all of this snowballs because when you're installing AI, it's like installing a really fun employee that can do really cool magic tricks. And so you show your friends and you show your coworkers and you're like, hey, I did this and this is the result. And then that person's like, I hate that part of my job. I would love if AI Phil could pull this off for me every single day. And so that's the part we see. We don't end up because by the time we install the software and get it rolling, I always say it's we gave them rocket fuel. We built the rocket for them. We gave them the rocket. We taught them how to fly it. And then they're off flying it somewhere. And we don't see the 2, 3 years down the road just because of the nature of our business.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I would have a hard time letting go in those instances because I always want to know what's next. I'd love to follow up, but I'm sure you've managed to put that emotional pain aside, deep as it is.
Yeah, I try. You follow them in the news and you see them on LinkedIn, but client agency relationships is a tough one because we're on to the next thing too. So we get busy and we want to make sure we're surviving, but they're also on to their cool things too. And they're using the tool. And as long as it's still active, I'm happy.
That's good. Hey, let's switch gears here for a second because I would be remiss if I didn't go this entire conversation without noticing or at least calling out your background in nuclear submarine engineering. And I know that led you to some patented supply chain innovations and some other interesting work. I'm interested, how are you applying, if you are, how are you applying any of that systems thinking to AI implementations? And are there supply chain opportunities based on your experience there that middle market execs should be considering?
Yeah, I mentor a lot of individuals now that come to me and ask, how did you do the success? What are the steps should I take? And they're 21, they're out of school, and they're like, I can't wait to start my company. I think I'm blessed to not only have a job out of school, but I was blessed to be in a large government-run organization. The nuclear submarine part was obviously the product we were building. So it was a great product, and it was a lot of fun to learn how they're operating and how they're built and how they float and sink and all those fun things. But at the end of the day, when you're part of a large organization, you learn how scheduling and supply chain really works. And putting a submarine together is no small feat. There's a giant software tool in there called Primavera, which is a dedicated planner tool that lets you know when things need to be installed on the submarine and if something misses, what it delays. So everything's waterfalled and connected, and submarines are built on a 5-year schedule. And that lesson is you have to think in systems. And so one of my favorite books of all time is called The Goal, and it's this story told as if it was like a fictional story about a manufacturing shop going through the transformation of low profit and high churn of their product, and really just not being a successful manufacturing shop, being negative some months, to turning it around and being a profitable manufacturing shop with the right margins. And it's like any story that is in the tech crunch of the world or companies that do very well. It's turning the process around through systems. And I think what I'm very good at, and something that I've learned, especially as a supply chain analyst, is bottlenecks will appear. And when a bottleneck is relieved, it creates a bottleneck somewhere else. And a system thinker can understand where that next bottleneck is and understand that if I want to move widgets through a supply chain, there is a throughput that can happen. And it can only happen by the largest bottleneck. So if you can only do 10 widgets at station 7, your output is only going to be 10, no matter how many station 15 can do. And a systems thinker can understand that. And I've trained myself, and I've been trained on how do I help an agency get more product out, more process out, more, like, especially for our clients that are trying to get such quick return on investments. How do I look at the bottleneck and say, I'm sure you want to relieve that one, but this is your bigger problem. And even internally at 923, I think we do a great job with delivering projects on time. And it's because we've removed the blockers that allow us to move fast. And so therefore, or we remove the blockers so that we can move fast. And I think that what that does is it creates this efficiency speed throughout projects that we can expand horizontally and not have to worry about the vertical stack of control, because each project runs on the rails of each client. We have 27 active projects. Those projects can run concurrently because each one is doing the same system, the same process. A person can jump in from project 1 to project 7 to project 9, understand and gather the information. And that's all system thinking. That has nothing to do with training or knowledge. It's truly knowing that, like, the reason that happens is because the systems are identical. And so when I view this, like, especially if I go to a hospital, systems in hospitals are great, no matter how much we complain about them. A nurse can walk in at a midnight shift, look at a piece of paper, and pick up exactly where the nurse at the 4 p.m. shift left off. They do a really great job. And so those types of things are what we mimicked, and what I've learned is, how do you move work ahead with different time zones, with people all working remotely, with clients from all different industries, and how do you create that system that allows us to take a project in and output it? And we have great return. Like, we're 24 out of 27 projects last year on time and on budget. And consistently do that is definitely systems thinking.
I've got to say, we could probably spend an entire episode talking about that. I can't tell you how many middle market companies, even well-resourced ones in the multi-$100 million range, I walk into, that what you just described probably sounds to them like a fantastical state of being that they'll never achieve.
Yes.
Especially when it's not a production line or a manufacturing line, because that's right. Visible, it's easy. You know, we've got lean, Kaizen, all these different things that we can apply. But when it's a service delivery, like what you're talking about, I think it makes it a little bit more intangible, and people don't necessarily think about it in terms of systems thinking. Yeah. What is one tip, other than reading the goal or maybe theory of constraints? I don't know. But what's one tip that you could give folks that are engaged in a service providing atmosphere that would allow them to begin experimenting and reaping the benefits from systems thinking?
Yeah, it's the same thing they teach, no matter how many business books, or even Alex Hormezi now is going to have his own business system, I imagine. It's scorecards. So we run on EOS. It's a scorecard. I know the who, not how guy. He has his own business system. They have a form of a scorecard where EOS learns from, which is the E-Myth. They have a scorecard. But for us, scorecards come in financial KPIs. So we start off with any service provider. The most important thing is you want to understand your net profit, but you want to understand what your project delivery efficiency ratio is. And so internally for 923, we have a ratio called the direct labor efficiency ratio. And what that means is, if you're working on a project, you are charging time to that project. And so to get a system to work, especially in nuclear submarines, but in a service industry, you have to track time. And so everybody in my company that gets paid from a paycheck has to track time on everything they're doing when they're touching 923 stuff. And for other people that don't track time, they think that sounds ridiculous. For everyone that tracks time, they're like, yeah, it's normal and it's fine and it's really not that big of a deal, because I'm working on 3 projects, I track what I do, but it gives us immediate answers to that system thinking. I can wake up every single day and I can let you know which project is behind or ahead, which person tracked too much time on a project, which person tracked too little time on a project. And it gives us the ability to create real-time decisions to help relieve those bottlenecks, not just from a project standpoint, but from an aggregation standpoint across all projects, because we need to move people around every once in a while. Excuse me. And we need to understand as a studio, like, our people are our service. Our people are the consultants, and they're our product. And so we need to understand, what is their output? Are they on vacation next week? Are they traveling? Like, what hours are they working? All of that matters, and you can only truly track that system through time tracking. It's why when you put on a manufacturing lathe, the estimated time it's going to take to cut the part, because if it takes more than 5 minutes that it did the first time, you start changing the averages of that part. Because when you do 100 of them, you want to know the stack up time of all 100 parts across that machine because it's going to hold up another department. It's all the same system. And so humans, when time tracked, can create that financial tracking system that you can wake up and have real-time analytics about your business. And if you do that, that'd be the number one tip that I would provide any service provider, to allow them to have systems in place, but then systems tracked.
Perfect. I really appreciate you taking the time to answer that, because I know that's a subject of interest to a lot of our listeners. And it's maybe not directly related to our AI conversation, but good information nonetheless. So we are going to swing back into AI land here. And I want to go back to something that you mentioned at the top of our conversation. You had made a statement along the lines of the efficiencies and the summarization are just not there as we get increasingly more, quote, air quote, capable AI models. And I think that we could basically characterize that as saying that we're, in your opinion, at the top of LLMs. Is that fair?
We're in the top. Software around what LLMs can do has a long way to go. The actual predicting of the next word and using that next word for business returns are close to the top.
Okay. So that's pretty provocative, because that's not what we hear from some of the more hyperbolic statements from the AI labs. How should middle market execs be thinking about their AI strategy if LLM capabilities are plateauing?
See, I changed the question.
Yeah, please.
Large language models is a new way of thinking about how computers operate.
Okay.
We used to think of them from ones to zeros. And so we created software tools to connect departments, to have my ones and zeros in my department communicate with the ones and zeros in your department. Mm-hmm. HubSpot was primarily in the sales department, and QuickBooks was in the finance department. So let's connect those two with an API so that every time I do work on my computer, you get updated about your information. Mm-hmm. AI is a fundamental new employee. It is a new computer way, a new way to use computers that are intercepting the department communication. And whether you consider them an employee or an agent, or you're giving one employee 8 hands, we're not connecting departments. We're enhancing each department's ability to get the work done that's been provided to them. So it's not this new, like, SaaS tools came about because they were productivity hacks for that tool that they were using. And a lot of the software we used was to reduce the time it took to do the task at hand. Accountants is a great example. You used to handwrite all of your taxes and bookkeeping and all that. And sure, QuickBooks came along and Xero came along, and now you can reduce that time and store all the information and recall the information and search it. That ones and zeros software tool is a great solution for it. Executives need to look at a large language model not as like, hey, I can't wait for 6.0 ChatGPT to come out because it's going to be faster, better to prompt, and easier to understand the answer, and it's going to be more accurate. We don't need better accuracy, because humans are pretty much equivalent to the accuracy that a large language model is right now. We need software built around the large language model to give us more deterministic answers for our business in the ways that the human used to be answering that question or problem that the business had before. And when you think of it that way and you say, great, can I install something today that is as good as Joanne in accounting at answering every time an invoice comes in and formatting it for my company? And if the answer is yes, why do you need a large language model? Why do you need anything more than what the tool that's been provided to you today is going to do? There's no need to wait, because once you install that tool for Joanne can go off and do the things that are creating money for your company and not organizing invoices for your system. And that's the thought process that executives need to think about. Not what can the AI do, but what can the AI do right now that'll save me hundreds of thousands of dollars if I install it.
I'm glad you redirected that question and parsed that a little further, because, and again, tell me if I'm mischaracterizing what I'm hearing here. What I think I'm hearing you say is that some of the smaller, more lightweight, more narrowly tailored models are going to be a better fit to provide the solution based on individual workflows and the types of outputs that we need. Is that fair?
Yeah, it doesn't matter the model. It matters that the way large language models communicate with humans that are prompting it matter. And the way you can extract an answer through prompting matters. And when you give that to an engineer that understands how to prompt a model, you're going to get similar results. Some of them are better, some of them are worse, but you're going to get results that can change a business output or consistently respond the way a business is supposed to respond. Once you find a model that does that, it doesn't matter what model it is. So our perfect example, we did a chat bot for an insurance company. And the first question that most people ask when they go to an insurance company is, hi, how are you? I don't care if it's 4.0 or 3.5, but I'm going to respond with, great, where are you located? How's the weather? Right? Like that is a human response that doesn't take much thought. It's very predictive that that's the first response. But then the next question is, hey, I'm looking for health insurance. Great. We have a product agent that has a RAG associated to it that knows all of the product insurance products that are possible to give to somebody for health insurance. And it's just a list. It's a deterministic list, and sometimes it changes. But for the most part, like it just has to pick one of them that fits that client. So what does it do first? It has to ask a series of questions of who are you? How old are you? What are the check boxes that I need to determine which product to provide to you? That doesn't involve anything more that hasn't been invented yet. ChatGPT 5.0 is not going to solve anything better than 4.0 can right now. It involves engineering to figure out how to ask those questions nicely and in the insurance brand and voice. And once that's done, maybe the model doesn't need to be updated because Joanne's not getting upgraded anytime soon either, right? So like we have enough tools, we have enough knowledge. CEOs need to stop thinking about what's next and look at the companies that are saving hundreds of thousands of dollars with, in some of our cases, we have 8-figure returns with a 6-figure investment. Do you need more than that? Like that's a lot of change right now with the tools that's available. Just install those and reap the benefits.
Got it. I think I've seen more, let me back up. I have seen an increasingly large number of thought pieces around exactly what you just laid out there, which is basically that there's a gap. There's an adoption gap, there's an adaptation gap, there's a mindset gap between what the technology is allowing and then over here, much further back, where people are right now. And basically what I think you just said to me is that we have the technology that we need. We have the resources that we need. You don't need to wait for whatever the next greatest, shiniest object is. We can deploy now, and it can be fairly effective based on the existing tech.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And not can we deploy now? We need to hire with that in mind. Mm-hmm. We need to have a concept that the tools and the world is going to have AI working alongside humans. And what part of our business can benefit most if we had an agent working alongside these humans.
All right. So if we've got what we need, air quotes again, with the large language models right now, what is next? What should we be thinking about in terms of the AI technologies and capabilities that are coming along that are maybe not ChatGPT 5 or 6 or whatever it is, but something different, like a large vision model or a large reasoning model? What are some of the things that you see on the horizon that would substantially change what we just talked about in terms of LLM capabilities?
The beautiful thing about large language models is that it's built on software that was built for 20 years. And cloud software tools, SaaS tools, HubSpot, Salesforce, Gmail, Outlook are all building blocks for AI. And at this point right now, the next 2 years, I would bet everything on is a race to find the voice model and the chat model that works on a computer from an operating system standpoint, or becomes a personalized model of myself that I use for every tool that I've ever used in my life. And I'll explain that further. The next, I always think of global guts, right? Like you want to get to the aggro crag. You want to get to the top of the global guts. What is the goal that every company is trying to race towards right now? Why are they all competing with each other? Because Microsoft has Copilot. And Copilot is installed in every piece of software that somebody at HP or Dell, or think of a big Fortune 100 company, they're in Microsoft. There is no need for any other software to ever be installed in Microsoft in HP or Dell ever again. They don't need to buy a new software tool. They don't need to buy another SaaS tool ever again. They need to start thinking that Copilot is going to have all the knowledge from all the SaaS tools they currently have, and combine that information so that a person can be in their email, and when they get a new email, have all the context they need to respond to that email on the right-hand side in Copilot. When they're about to send an invoice and they have a question about that invoice, they don't leave the screen. They respond to the question and ask the question about that invoice to the other people in the company that's either responded to by an agent or another human at that company, right there, right next to that invoice. If you're in HubSpot and you're trying to do CRM work, or you're a salesperson, you need to have HubSpot uses Breeze, but imagine if Copilot could just talk to HubSpot for you and you never need to log into HubSpot again. And it says, these are the 3 people you need to contact today. And here's all the context around those 3 people. Here's the information about the deals that you need to close. Here's all of the prospecting information you need, maybe the pricing that you've solved in the past. All that information that used to be scattered across drives and OneDrive and Google Drive and all these places need to be contextually relevant back to that person needing to answer that question. If we go in that direction, and that's where Microsoft's going, and that's where Google's going, I will have one place on my computer or my phone or my laptop that I ask these questions to do work with me and watch my work and help my work and guide me through work. And if that's true, I don't need ever to install software again. I need to connect all of my software tools to that. And that's where MCPs come in. MCPs are the ability for an entire API library to be ingested into a server so that that server can respond to my requests and answer anything I have about information I have on their software tool. So with my Gemini or with my Copilot, I can ask HubSpot a question. With my Copilot, I can ask QuickBooks a question. And all the user permissions go along with that. So if I'm the owner of a company, I'm completely comfortable launching Copilot for everybody at my company to talk to their data. If that's all the direction we're going, I don't need another large language model. I just need to be taking every piece of software, connecting them together, and having conversations between those software tools to contextually give me answers when I'm working on anything at that company.
That is a really interesting view, because I think there's another implication to that as well, which is, at what point do we start eliminating software?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
The paradigm I have with that, and I've talked to a lot of people about this because I've had this vision since last summer, where your phone no longer needs to have apps, right? So I've always used the example of, like, if I need to go to the airport, I need to order an Uber. And Uber is in the business of delivering a car to my house and getting me to the airport. And so the founder of Android came to me and we were talking about this, and he was like, you can't give up the idea that Uber's not going to allow their server to give information to anybody. Like, they're not going to give it to Microsoft and just say, go crawl my server and order Uber for me. They're going to want you to log in to Uber and access their cars the way they want you to access their cars. And so that's why I think MCPs are so important, because it keeps the information inside of each company's silo and allows them to share what they want to share through the MCP, just like APIs. There's no difference in API and MCP. Like, it gives them that onus while still allowing the chatbot to be the human to naturally ask for the Uber. And so in that scenario, a little on my phone, like, if I don't have any apps and I just have a series of, let's say, widgets, and I just have a button that's like voice, and I'm like, hey, order me an Uber, or actually, I'm sorry, order me a taxi to the airport. And Uber pops up with like $20. Do you want me to check out here? Lyft pops up with like $25. Do you want to check out here? And then Fluffy's taxi service pops up and it's like, do you want to check out here for $4? I then make that selection. It goes and pays for me. It brings a taxi to me. It brings me to the airport. Do I care about the brand? Yes. Like, I don't want Fluffy's taxi service to pick me up for $4. I want Uber, right? And so I do think the implication of software is that we lose the website interface. I don't need to log into the Uber app to request an Uber. I want my voice to do it from the voice prompt from my Gemini, like on my phone. I hold down the button. I just say, order me a taxi to the airport. And I want the agents to do the rest. But there will be some sort of approval that comes from the applications, I believe, because they will not let their information out of the box to Google or Microsoft.
Right. Well, and in the world that you've just described, the value is, and it is now, but the value is in the information. It's not in the interface. And,
that's right.
And we're really talking about disintermediation on a large scale of software as a service and software in general. So
that's right.
Yeah. Okay. I want to pause for a second and just kind of recognize that that's a pretty profound conversation thread that you and I just had. So if anybody didn't quite catch that, I highly encourage you to go back a couple minutes and listen to that again. You may have just gotten a peek at the future there. So since we're talking about software, when you build products, and you've built, 150 plus of them so far?
Yes,
okay.
Right, yeah.
How do you advise execs on when to build a custom solution powered by AI versus just adopting an existing AI tool? What's that calculus look like?
Yeah, This is a tough one. I used to try to be unbiased here and say you can go off the shelf. With AI, I don't see that much. I don't see that many use cases where you can go off shelf, and just buy something off the shelf and put it in for your company. Now there's a few products that I really enjoy. Like Updraft is one of them. It's very specific. It's very needed for a specific use case across an organization that is so niche that if you're in that company and you know exactly this is a tool I need to save me 40 hours and I just need to install my documents here and get the results from that document because it knows how to ask the questions that experts ask in my field that I went to school for, that trains me. Like a lawyer is a good example. Get Harvey is a great example of a product that takes a bunch of legal documents, summarizes it, and says, you're trying to make the same argument 100 times, use this paragraph because you've done it 100 times. That's off the shelf, and I get that. But most CEOs are looking at software build versus buy of a custom solution for their company that is not like a very obvious research tool or a very obvious analytical tool. And they're trying to say help my employees be better. That's custom, right? Because you have brand, you have voice, you have IP, you have knowledge, you have a different way of doing things. And if you try to install a software tool, you're going to be up against the fact of you're waiting for that software tool to release features for your fine-tuned model about AI. So what if it doesn't talk like you? What if it doesn't respond like you? Do you go to ChatGPT and then say, here's a paragraph, here's my brand voice, copy my brand voice and copy it out of ChatGPT, and then you multiply that times 100 employees doing that? It's a waste of even having that software tool to begin with. So my belief is, and what I pitch, is you should start with a knowledge base around your brand and IP. Imagine you're like an oil rig in the middle of the ocean, and you've been drilling for oil for 20 years of your data and more data and more data. And there's a bunch of other oil rigs out there drilling for their data, but every time you pull it up, you know that you have information that's worth gold. How are you going to share that information with the world? Are you going to do it privately, publicly? Are you going to manage it a different way? Because you get to make that decision, you need to have software that's adaptable to those decisions. You need to understand that your data is going to be utilized in a way that's going to make you money, and that will be your IP. So if you trust a software tool to do that, 10 other companies are going to be doing the same exact thing as you. You have no uniqueness, you have no individuality, and you really don't have any advancements on the market that you would if you were custom. And because we use SaaS tools to help our productivity, we all helped our productivity down so that we could be better, but we didn't share our information. We didn't share the thing that made us good. With AI, you have to share information. And so if you're going to share your information with a SaaS tool and you're competing against a company that's using the same SaaS tool, you have no edge. You have no advantage. And so I truly believe that AI is custom. And I'll hammer this home by telling you a story of, I know a guy that has a software company. It's a SaaS tool, and he's approaching 10 million, almost $15 million now in ARR. He's only been around for a year and a half. Great success story. And so I was asking him about his business, and I was asking, how many people are in your business? And he's like, I got 80 individuals now. I've ramped up from 5 people to 80 this last year. I'm like, that's incredible. What are the roles of those individuals? Now, granted, he has a SaaS product that it's the same product multiplied across, he almost has 1,000 clients, so multiplied across all these different industries and all these different sectors. And I said, of those 80 people, and he's like, I got 4 or 5 engineers, a few C-suite people and managers, and then I have 60 account managers. And I'm like, whoa, 60 account managers? And he's like, yeah. Every time we went into real estate or legal, we needed an account manager to fine-tune that AI model specifically for that client's requests. And so it works, but I keep having to refine the model for that client's customer service. They ask a question, I need to refine it. Sure enough, customer 2 in that same sector asks similar questions. So the model works for both of them, but the legal one doesn't work for real estate, and the real estate one doesn't work for the grocery industry. And so I was like, you're not running a SaaS product. You're running an agency. Your product is structured around service. You have white glove service for each of your product lines, and those product lines are serving each of those customers in a very one-to-one relationship way. So I don't know. I just think that's the way the world's going with AI is you want to be unique. And if you want to share your data, you're going to have to, kind of bend the knee to the fact that you need to custom build it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the example that you just gave with that company, I think it begs another question in terms of the best structure for your team. And, to bring it back to kind of AI consultancies and folks that are making decisions about the capabilities that they need. What is the most effective way to build the capabilities? So in your example, you talked about hiring the account reps, basically, to get that knowledge in there. But for organizations that are looking to build and deploy AI technologies, do they need to be thinking about that the same way in terms of hiring expertise, bringing it in-house? Do they need to partner with consultants? Is there a hybrid approach? What do you think makes the most sense there?
Yeah, if you combine a few of the things we've talked about in this podcast and you believe in the same future that I am, that Copilot is going to be the place in which all of your employees live to ask questions, Joanne, the expert at that company, her knowledge is going to be injected into Copilot. So you don't need to hire another Joanne to be Joanne. Joanne just needs to make sure that everything that she used to answer is now part of the Copilot system so that when somebody else asks a question, it's present to them. I truly believe that companies can run on the same number of employees that they have with double or triple the revenue. I don't think you need to fire people. I think you need to train the people you have to be more efficient at the job that they do. If those are true, if both of those are true, right? Like if you can train the co-pilots on the knowledge, and if you don't need to hire new employees, you don't need to hire an expert. You need to teach your current employees how to use AI. And that comes from an agency installing the right tool set. It's like a house, right? Like you don't go and build a house yourself. You let somebody else build the house and then you decorate it yourself. You make it yours after. But a house is a house. Like a contractor's not doing anything special. A bathroom has the same shape and the same type of toilet with the same hole, and then the electricity is the same, like in the walls. Inside the walls, there's nothing special. But to be an expert at building a house, you can do it more efficiently than a random person that says they're going to build their own house. And that's exactly what we're offering is we'll build you the house, we'll build you the foundation, we'll put the electricity in and the plumbing in, we'll give you a owner's manual, aka youtube.com, and you go off and then you decorate your house and make it yours. And if you need any questions, we're here to call. Like if the walls break, we'll build it again. But like that's truly, I think, how companies should be looking at this. And I'm biased because I'm in that industry, but I don't see another way.
Yeah. Well, I've got a neighbor that built a house, and he decided not to finish his second story, and that was, I think, 4 years ago. So, yeah, there's still raw insulation and no drywall, and yes, so point well taken.
Yeah. You know the calculation of that people don't think about, which is always like the most ironic thing about humans. You mentioned that everyone always says like, oh, the cost of building the house was $20,000, and I'm going to save that money, or let's say it's $200,000. I'm going to save that money by building it myself. I'll make another $100,000. That human that spent a year building a first story and not building a second story could have made $50,000 with his time doing something else. And we don't remember that it's not just $100,000 lost. He's actually $150,000 in debt.
You are not wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Well, speaking of time and the usage thereof, our time is drawing short here. So as we get ready to land our plane, because an hour goes quickly, I'd like to ask you just for a final tip or a piece of advice here for execs that are listening that want to move beyond AI curiosity to actual implementation, because there's a lot of them still. I'm still shocked at the number of organizations that aren't even dipping their toe in the pond, so to speak. But for those that want to go beyond curiosity to actual implementation, what's a good first step? Just not in technology land, but also in terms of their mindset, how they should be thinking about this.
Yeah, this dovetails well with the post I just put out on LinkedIn, considering what's happened in OpenAI today. I think execs need to learn to stop listening to the news, because the news is driven by people like Sam Altman that fabricate their story and think that the world is going to end, and the fact that they're going to be in charge of AGI and the Elon Musks of the world and the Sam Altmans of the world and the people running Claude and all these large language model, the frontier models. They tell these stories that get into the news, making us think that like the end is near. It's not. Like we have a long ways to go to build AI products. We have a lot to learn as a human race. And there are great people online, like Pascal Bornet is a great one. Andrew NG, like he's great. Ali K. Miller, like these people are in AI and they've been in AI for a long time. Bernard Marr is another one too that I really like. And Practical AI is a podcast that I listen to. But the point I'm trying to make is like, listen to the people that are building, listen to the people that are finding efficiencies and touting those efficiencies and saying, this is what's actually happening when I use AI correctly. And stop listening to the news and the fabricated AGI stories, because that's the truth of how you're going to learn is when you read books. Like we go to school, we don't like read the stuff that's like, fabricated stories. We read the actual foundational models. And I mean, the fundamentals, we learn from the basics. So learn from the basics for AI, and you'll start realizing these new paradigms that you can enter into.
Spoken like a true systems trained engineer.
Love it. Right. Yeah. Good point.
Well, so speaking of listening to people that know what they're talking about, if any of our listeners want to learn more about you, your company, your work, get in touch with them or get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that, Andrew?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm not that famous on LinkedIn, so you can hit me up in messaging on LinkedIn. I pretty much read all the messages. I have it up all day. I post once a day on LinkedIn too, so you can follow along with some of the AI stuff that I'm learning, and all the things I've said on this show, I've either regurgitated or learned from somebody else. So that's how you can kind of keep up with me, is through that.
Well, what was that Steve Jobs famous saying? Good artists copy, great artists steal?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, we all do that, right? We have to learn from somewhere, so we have to educate ourselves from somebody that's doing. And I learn from my engineers too, and I get to tout what they learn from other people. It's a great process.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you bringing your learnings to our show today and sharing this with our listeners. I really enjoyed our conversation, so thank you so much for sharing all your insights with us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me, Chad.
You bet. All right. For our listeners, thank you for once again tuning into AI for the C-Suite, where we're committed to helping middle market leaders thrive during the exponential age. If you found value in today's discussion, be sure to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on all the socials, and visit our site, aiforthecsuite.com. Join us next time as we continue to unlock the potential of AI for your organization. And until then, keep your algorithms running, your leadership evolving, and your AI in check. Take care, everybody.